Good evening, everyone. I have Leslie Appleby here, and I met her in the fall of last year, 2021. We joined with a network marketing of patriots that came together, and we got to know each other from there. And I started hearing about her experiences with life and all these different things. And I was thinking, okay, well, maybe she can do a check in to see how the babies are doing. And so I got in contact with her. And Leslie, how did you know I was pregnant, or why did you believe me?
Well, it's really interesting. Um, you told me that you've been pregnant for a long time, and I literally heard a voice in my head say, "That's not possible." But I don't listen to that voice because that's the same voice that says there's limits on so many things. It's like a super ego coming in and trying to control me. And so I put it away and I just looked at you, and I looked at you from my heart and my gut, and I knew right away you were pregnant. So then the next thing was, well, is it possible you could be pregnant that long? And it just absolutely never occurred to me that you couldn't be. Of course you could be pregnant that long. And why that came to me, I don't know, but it seemed like this organic knowledge that I had that yes, it was possible. And then the next thing was I looked inside and I thought I saw two babies. And then that's where I actually felt a little bit shy about talking about it because did you know you are going to have two babies? And am I right? But it looks like two. And so then I said, is it possible you're having two? And it was like, that was it, because you also had felt like you were having two.
Yeah.
And we went from there.
Mhm.
At which
So,
point I saw you had a boy and a girl.
so just curious, did you use tools? Did you, uh, how did you see the babies?
It's just something I've been trained to do my whole life is see auras, see energy fields around people, see how they connect to the ether and to their higher selves. And part of that is seeing new life. You have the new life energy within you.
Okay,
It's,
so is there a term for that?
I don't think so. I
Remote.
mean, we call it remote viewing in this country. Um, in other languages, you would call it being a seer, SEER, being able to see, a seer.
Okay.
And that's a tradition that actually is carried down in all other civilizations, Native Americans, shamanism, all of that. But particularly with, I think you find it with midwives and women who are healers.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So the next question I had was, um, what had you been through in your journey with this?
Yeah, so
What experiences with doctors and things like that? What was going on with you?
I haven't had very good experiences with doctors. I recall in the first few months of feeling like I was very pregnant, I had a lot of strong symptoms. I would wake up in the middle of the night and feel like a pinching in my uterus. I would wake up starving. I also was I was lightheaded in the first weeks. So about month 3, I decided to go to to the doctor, and they immediately did a P test. They requested for me to do that, and it came back negative. So I I didn't really I didn't listen to that. I knew I was pregnant, but I didn't understand what I was going through. I did get the P test bill in the mail, and it was $500, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, I just feel like having a baby is such a business. And anyway, so I did that around month 3, around month 5, I did that again, did another P test. same thing, negative. And then around month 6 or 7, I discovered cryptic pregnancy, that it's a real thing. And so I started speaking to a midwife who has now had 5 babies like myself. Now she's had all single pregnancies. They've been all around a year to 18 months. But again, she only had 1 baby in each. And then I also saw her in December of this last year, and she did a cervical exam. She checked the baby's heartbeat, the position of the babies, and overall health. And the first thing she said, she's like, "You look like you could pop. You're very close." She did the cervical exam, and felt that I was 30% effaced. And then going into January, I decided to go to a hospital because I had a little bit of my water break. Now, when a water break does come out a little bit, but doesn't put you in labor, it'll seal itself back and replenish itself. So that's a very good thing. But I went to the doctor in request of a cervical exam to see where my effacement uh, and dilation was. But again, they did a P test and it was negative. So then they would not do the cervical exam. Now, the reason why these P tests are negative is because I don't produce HCG, and that's the only thing that they use to measure a lady's gestation period or pregnancy.
Now, did they do a physical exam? Did they touch your belly? Did they listen to anything with a stethoscope at all to see if there's a heartbeat? What did they do before you had the test?
Yeah, so they had my heartbeat monitored, and they were monitoring the babies. Now, the babies were running away from the monitor, which I felt like their auras were repelling the technology being used. They used the sonogram. Now, it wasn't a professional sonogram tech. They said that too. But they're like, "Oh my gosh, it's very staticky. I've never seen it so staticky." They physically saw I was pregnant, but they, did the P test, and
So they
so
actually, they physically knew that you were, they believed you were pregnant before they did all of this other medical, and then they turned around and said, you're not pregnant.
yeah, they're like, "You need to go back to your midwife." I was like, "Well, I I won't be here," and I at that point discovered I cannot be delivering in a hospital. I won't be able to.
Yeah.
But it's kind of funny. One of their machines, though, that was monitoring my own heartbeat, it stopped, just stopped. And the nurse ran in and was like, "Are you okay? Is everything okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm okay." And then I thought, "Well, wow, my goodness, your machine is faulty." So, but yet you're relying on all these machines to give you answers. And it's very messed up in my eyes.
Machinery, I have to say something about machinery and psychic ability, because this is something that I deal with. I know a gentleman, very famous gentleman named Lynn Buchanan. He was a remote viewer. He was one of my teachers. He was also a Baptist minister before he went into the army. Very spiritual man. And he was in Europe. He was a computer programmer, and he'd written a computer program that was for the military. And someone actually presented it and then said that they had written the program. And he lost his temper, but he couldn't do anything because he was, a lower rank. But he got so angry, he wiped out all of the computers in that room. Then also the computers that were connected to it in America. And it was really interesting because when we were talking about it, when I was studying with him, he said, "Yeah, I also took out a few other continents as well, but I don't mention that." And that's how powerful psychic ability is in affecting machinery.
Wow.
And all of that machinery that you're talking about is using computer chips.
Wow.
Think about the people who wear wristwatches and they can't wear them because they blow out the watch, or they don't keep time correctly.
That's
That
actually
is
been
all.
happening to me. That's been happening to me. I can't even wear a watch right now. I'm trying to figure that
Right.
out. My mom has that issue too.
Yeah, I do too. It's people with strong psychic ability
Wow.
Usually cannot wear watches, but you know what time it is anyway.
Yeah.
It's funny. Anyway,
Mm,
so so all right. So we know that you can't deal with the medical field.
mm,
This brings us to the question of what's happening with this whole thing that they're denying a woman can be pregnant more than 9 months. What's their problem with this? Let's go back to the Bible. In the Bible, we have people living to be 300 and 400 years old. Now, a lot of people today say, oh, that can't possibly be true, but we know that that's true. They've actually have had studies done, archaeologists, and saying, these people really lived a long time, way more than the normal, what we think of as normal. So we do have evidence that this is true. So if people lived like Methuselah, if they lived to be that old, who's to say that they didn't also have pregnancies that could last 10 years?
yeah.
We are so limited in our beliefs. And the other thing that really bothers me is that it's not just the medical field. It's, I've spoken to several other women about your situation. One of them suggested, oh, it's probably just a tumor, because she was a historian and she's saying that uh, Henry VIII's daughter, who was known as Bloody Mary, had a pregnancy and then delivered a tumor. And well, we were talking about the fact that when you looked it up, it turns out that people with tumors have an abundance of HCG,
Yes.
which makes sense. Since it's a growth hormone, it grew a tumor.
Yeah.
And so that's the opposite of what you guys have. And then I spoke to another woman who'd had pregnancies, and she was just absolutely adamant that this could not possibly be under any circumstance, that, perhaps you were crazy.
Yeah.
And I was very offended by that, because this person, I found that, again, very mean,
Hmm.
to just out of hand. But of course, unfortunately, it's our societal conditioning.
Yeah.
And this also brings up the fact that we have the highest mortality rate in the United States of babies dying. I think you have some, yeah.
Yeah. So I looked up the mortality rate. I've known that the United States does have a high one, but wow, like statistics definitely confirm that. We've got United States with almost twice as much as most countries.
Yeah.
And also here's another statistic where the United States has higher mortality.
Can you move it over a little more?
Yes. So
There we go. Yeah.
infant mortality per 1,000 live births with and without
Wow.
minimum threshold of 22 weeks gestation. So this might be because they push women to give birth at 9 months.
It could be. I mean, a friend of mine had a sister who had twins at 10 and a half months. You were telling me about, I think it's your stepdad.
Hmm.
He was 12 months.
Yes.
And, some babies may just need to have more time.
Yeah.
And to push them out at 9 months could mean that they actually are not ready, and that shows up in death. The other possibility is the fact that women in our country are literally pushed out of the hospital so quickly before they have a chance to actually make sure that the mother and baby are healthy. I remember when I was young, I was born in 1952, and I remember that women used to stay in the hospital for days. And even I know that in Italy, I was at a clinic for my thyroid in 2003, and they put me on the same floor as the maternity ward. So I actually got to have the wonderful experience of being there with women having babies and actually staying there for 5 days. Even if they were healthy and the baby was healthy, they kept them there for 5 days. And
So,
they had, you'll notice they weren't even on that chart that you just showed in Italy.
yeah, correct. Which
So
means,
clear,
which may mean
yeah,
they have very few to none
yeah.
mortality.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see if they have the same thing of pushing everyone at 9 months and saying, okay, if you haven't delivered by 9 months, we're just going to induce labor or give you a cesarean, which seems to be what's happening now here.
Yeah.
Well, there is another possibility which gets really into the crazy stuff, but it's not really crazy. And that is that we are going through ascension. Many of you guys that are aware of the fact that the sun has turned white. The Schumann resonance, which is the planet's hum, has been going very, very high. It used to be at in 7.8, something like that. And now it spikes up to 500, even up to 1,000. And this is the hum of our Mother Earth actually going to a higher level. And we, being part of Mother Earth, also all go to a higher level. And it's just possible that the reason why we have all these indigo children being born is because they are part of that process. They're resonating to Mother Earth. Now, look at what happens to these poor kids. Their labor is induced at 9 months. They may not be ready. Then they're immediately given, in the even giving them stuff for STDs when they're a few months old. It's just insane what's going on. And I believe that it is to actually stop their psychic ability because a lot of this is Mercury going across to the brain barrier, which could affect the pineal gland, which could affect their psychic ability. And it is possible that having a baby that nobody believes you're having is actually protecting the baby, hiding it from bad guys who want to do harm to it. Now, it's not hopeless for women who've had babies that are only 9 months and maybe were meant to be longer, because the human will, the survival, the fact that we're going higher and higher and higher in our vibrational energy means that no matter what these guys do to these children, they will eventually come up to the higher level and develop their psychic ability, their telepathy, their empathy, things like that. I do believe that the babies being born now are going to have those abilities as they get older, but it just may take them a little longer to get around what's been done to them at birth.
Now, I don't think that HCG is very good for them. I find it interesting that HCG wasn't discovered until the 1930s by a German scientist. And then the sonogram wasn't introduced until about 1960. And I feel that the sonogram is magnetic toward the HCG
Very possibly.
and seeing the babies. And, this is occurring more in other countries such as Africa, Haiti, the United Kingdom.
You mean the longer pregnancies?
Yes, the longer pregnancies are occurring in those countries, and they could be occurring in several other countries as well.
We
But
just don't know about it. But
yeah.
I'll tell you, the connection to Africa is ancient DNA.
Yes.
I mean, that's again talking about biblical.
Mhm.
Because if you go back with the ancient DNA to the origins of this round of life, because we've had other worlds before this one, but this world, a lot of the origins really are out of Africa. And so what may be happening is what we call an atavism, which is the ancient genes coming back. And the fact that you have women in Haiti, again, that connects to the ancient genes because it goes back to Africa, which is really cool.
And my baby's daddy is from Haiti. Now, something that I've been thinking about is he's the only one, when all this is done and I have delivered, he is the only one who's really going to stand the test of time when it comes to actually saying, yes, she's been pregnant for this long, because it had been several months before I had intercourse with him. And then the night I had intercourse with him is the last night I've had intercourse with him. So he's the only one who is going to know that I've been saying that I've been honest the whole time about how long I've been pregnant.
Right. And you can have a DNA test and that will prove he's the baby daddy, and that'll be it, because you haven't even seen him in so
Correct.
long. So,
Mhm.
this is going to nail it.
Yeah.
And it may be really important because
Mhm.
besides you making these videos, you have you're a voice for all of the women out there who are going through this.
Yes.
My heart goes out to all of you. It really does, because it's hard enough right now dealing with the problems we have politically and with so many people still being brainwashed and not being able to even believe things like what are happening to babies around the world or children being kidnapped or anything like that. They just don't believe it. But this carries over also
It does. Yeah.
to what's happening with you guys not being believed, and how hard it is to not just be not believed by the medical profession,
Mhm.
but when you're not believed by a family member or a friend
Or the
and
partner, the,
or a
the baby's
partner.
daddy. Yeah.
That's really, I mean, where do you go from there when you don't have support?
Yeah. It's very exhausting, to say the
Yeah,
least. But I I don't regret anything, or like I know that God brought my baby's daddy and I together, and I know that God is working on his heart, and just maybe we were attracted to each other because of this ancient DNA that we both share.
yeah. I agree. I think it's kind of interesting that you have it. I do see that there would be an attraction there to create these lives. Um,
Yeah.
I the next thing we need to look at are actually your babies and how they're doing. Like, one of the things that we worked on together was the fact that your
Surprise.
son, whom you've, can we tell him
Yeah.
his name? His
Yeah.
name is Moses, and your son was growing more quickly than your daughter Sapphira,
Yeah.
and I was concerned about that. And so what we did was we both focused on telling your son that he had to send the HCG that you were taking
Hmm.
to go to the little girl, to Sapphira, instead of to him.
Yeah.
And we communicated with him telepathically. And the next thing we knew, Sapphira started to grow much more.
Yeah. So,
So it worked.
yeah, everyone, for you, if you don't know, I have a supplement, HCG, and I have progesterone and estrogen. Estrogen and progesterone help protect the uterus, strengthen the uterus, and provide extra blood flow to the uterus. So we were praying and intending for those nutrients to go to Sapphira as well.
Yeah. And it worked.
Yeah.
And but then there was the most amazing thing that happened very recently, which was that, I keep tabs on you, just, even when we're not talking. And I felt that Sapphira, unfortunately, I was very tired. So, and I was falling asleep, but I suddenly felt that Sapphira was not doing so well. And so I pulled out my phone and I just messaged you and I said, Sapphira seems to be, diminishing a little bit. Her electrolytes are going down. And then I just passed out. And the next morning, first of all, what happened? You felt Sapphira.
Yeah. So I knew that she had been doing better. And I hadn't been communicating with Leslie about this or anything. I sent her this picture because I had woken up with this huge handprint on my belly. So I'll go ahead and share that.
Yeah. So what
Mhm.
happened was that first you send me the picture and you say, so you woke up and you felt that the Sapphira was feeling much better. And then, okay,
Yeah. So
it's
So
There, you
here's,
can just see it. You can just sort of see it on the side in this picture. This is the one where it's lighter. I
mhm,
think the other picture shows it better. Can you move
yeah,
over to the other? Yeah,
yep,
there you go.
yeah.
You
So
can,
yeah, go ahead.
so you can see these are definitely fingerprints,
Hmm.
and they're much larger than your hand.
Yeah,
And also where the thumb is not where your thumb would be.
yeah,
You'd have to be like either upside down or at a 90-degree angle or something or other to be able to put your hand where those fingerprints are.
yes.
They really look like a larger being.
Hmm.
And I do
Yeah.
believe that all babies are watched over by angels. I really do.
Mhm.
And here
Yeah.
was the situation where we were worried about your daughter going
Mhm.
to sleep, and then you wake up and there's this hand on your tummy.
Yeah, so that night I said in prayer, I was like, I invited Jesus in, I invited the angels, and I literally woke up
And
having
there
that
it
occurred.
was.
Now, when this happens, I do feel the angel's presence at night. Like sometimes the angel will wake me up. Not that they mean to wake me up, but I feel like like it's really strong. I don't know how to explain it, but I feel their presence. And uh, I don't usually take a bath in the morning or shower in the morning. I usually do it in the evening. But that morning, I wanted to kind of wake up, and I had to start work, so I did that. And I was like, wow, really surprised that that happened. It was just so visible. And also, you guys, I don't sleep with anyone else, so it couldn't have been anyone's handprint.
That's funny, actually. But yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know, for everyone, there are angels around. I mean, they love babies, so they hang around all the time when women are pregnant, and they are there for you when you get lonely or scared. Their arms are always out. You just have to ask because they have a non-interference policy, and there's a reason for that, which is a whole nother story. But um, and Jesus taught about the angelic host. And unfortunately, that's one of the books of the Bible that got knocked out by the Nicene Council.
Mhm.
Um, and he taught the fact that they had a non-interference policy. And so you had to ask them for help or ask them or invite them into your life. And then once you invite them into your life and give them carte blanche protection and make sure, of course, that they're angels that are from God and
Yeah.
heaven and, you know, connected to Jesus and or Buddha or whomever you know, look to for guidance. Um, but once you establish a relationship with the good angels, they're always there and they will always make their presence known.
Hmm.
And
So before,
I've actually seen them in remote viewing, like an army of them. It's amazing.
wow.
Yeah.
So before we go, I'll go ahead and share like a bump picture because I know Leslie's audience doesn't see me. So I thought I would give a
Yeah.
so you
Go
guys
for it.
know that this is very real. You know, again, I don't
Yeah.
know how big I have to get, but this is how big I am currently. So
You might get a little bit bigger because you have
yeah,
twins.
yeah, yeah.
And
So
it's been exactly how long now have you been pregnant?
I got pregnant in January of 2020, so I'm going on 2 years and a
You're
few
going
months.
past 2 years.
Yep, 2 years, 2 months.
Yeah, 2 years, 2 months.
Yeah.
And how long is it that they know? I think that that article that actually for my viewers, I'm going to put a link in underneath to a
Yeah.
website that
So
talks about this, but they said they usually 10 is the max,
yeah,
like
10 is the
2 to
max.
10, but they
Yeah.
had one that was 12 years that they
Yeah, and
knew
they,
about.
and then there's a quote by Andrew Bartzitz from the Galactic Historian. His last name is Bartzis. It's on page 68. The cycles have been manipulated by DNA farming. If the human reproductive system was not manipulated, most pregnancies would be 18 to 24 months, and in some instances, 5 years, up to 5 years. So, it could be up to 5 years. I don't feel like I have beyond 6 months to a year. I think that I will deliver this year. I feel very confident in that, especially with all the symptoms, labor symptoms that I've had the past few months.
Yeah.
But you know, as we mentioned earlier, uh, you know, HCG and all of that, the components of pushing a baby out at 9 months, might have very well been manipulated by
Well, we
man.
do know that
You know?
from where I stand, we believe, I'm part of the group that believes that we had our DNA manipulated along the way.
Yeah.
And some of it was just lost. I believe we actually had more strands of DNA, and that we actually are down to 2 and we should have more.
Yes.
So that's a whole nother story for another
It is.
day as to how I believe that happened and how it can change in the future.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I do agree. I think that he's onto something. And I think that right now, the most important thing is to help get this information out there and break that disbelief.
Yes.
I mean, literally crack it so that people realize that this is just programming.
Mhm.
This is a form of brainwashing, and why it's out there, to me, it has to just be some negative. I mean, when I sometimes try to communicate with higher beings, and I do communicate with the ninth dimension, and when I ask them why, it's almost as if they don't want to say anything. I just get back, it's far more sinister than you can imagine, is what I hear from them.
Yes.
And
So
that's scary.
it is very scary.
And I really I think you're very courageous and noble to be doing what you're doing, Samantha, in
Thank you.
making these videos.
It takes a lot of patience to go through this.
It takes a lot of patience to have babies for years, yes.
Yeah.
But you're very calm, and I really believe that when they say that God doesn't give us anything that we cannot handle. So clearly, you women who have this situation have it within you to handle it. You just may be off balance because of your surroundings and the people in your life, but you have it within you to be able to stay balanced if given the opportunity.
Yeah. Thank you. So, if anyone wants a session with Leslie, feel free to reach out to her. We'll put her email at the bottom, but it's info at intrepidvoyagers.com. That's INTREPIDVOYAGERS.com. And sometimes I might join in if you would like for me to. I I would enjoy doing that, and also think that Leslie is very much open and wanting to reach other women going through this.
I am. It's a whole new situation, and I think it's very connected to other work that I'm doing in healing. And but I believe everything is meant to be. So you're coming into my life is very special.
Yeah, thank you
All
very much.
right, dear.
Well, thank you everyone for listening and supporting me on this journey. And thank you for listening to what Leslie had to say about all of this. And we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.